This episode of Ladies Who Leap is brought to you by Pacific Business Partners. Pacific Business Partners helps women entrepreneurs replace the chaos of running a business with clarity, structure, and confident financial decisions. From bookkeeping and fractional CFO support to marketing strategy and operations, founder Angelica Wheaton and her team build the systems that let you finally step out of the day-to-day and lead. Learn more at pacificbp.com or follow them on Instagram at Pacific Business Partners. When Jake Messier reached out to me about sharing his story, I immediately knew this was a conversation I needed to have. As the host of Ladies Who Leap, I typically interview women, but during Men's Health Month, I felt it was important to shine a light on an issue most people don't even realize exists. Men get breast cancer too. Jake is living with stage 4 breast cancer, and instead of suffering in silence, he's become a powerful advocate, helping other men feel seen, supported, and informed. And this episode isn't just for men. It's also for the women who love them, wives, partners, mothers, sisters, daughters, friends, because often it's the women in a man's life who notice when something isn't right and encourage them to seek help. This is a powerful conversation. Jake shares his journey, the stigma surrounding male breast cancer, and how he's turned one of the life's greatest challenges into a mission to help others. Let's meet Jake Messier, the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. Hi, thanks for joining Ladies Who Leap. Today, a little different of a day today. I have Jake Messier. He's the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. He's a pioneering speaker and advocate, shattering stigmas around male breast cancer. With the largest social media platforms dedicated to the subject, he inspires men and women alike to confront breast health challenges, advocate for early detection, and build a community of support and awareness for survivors. Jake is a storyteller, strategist, and survivor. He's been a communications leader for 30 years. He even was a combat correspondent Marine for 10 years. Very impressive. His award-winning expertise in all kinds of things to do with communications, video production, media relations, and strategic campaigns with top-notch communications companies. He even had a company called Herd Strategy and Storytelling, which is a company that he sold in March 2025 after completing active treatment for metastatic male breast cancer. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you, Lisa. I don't even know why I'm doing anything. That intro was so great. I could probably just leave now. You did a much better job than I could ever do. So no, I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you giving me all that information too. In fact, there's more to it, and we'll talk about your background
Sure.
and everything, because I feel that your background has a lot to do with your success of being able to share this story.
It certainly helps, right? You know, I was a morning show, talk show DJ in the military for a while, like that Good Morning Vietnam. That was literally my job for a while. And so, you know, when you're given 3 topics and you expect to talk for an hour, then I can do that. So that lends itself to talking on social media pretty easily.
Yeah. I'm going to say, I was told in high school by an English teacher, you really talk really well. You want to have a job where you talk at. So I'm like,
It's true. It's
finally,
true.
after 41 years in the telecom industry, building the networks that actually connect everything that this happens, I'm now doing it. And this is my labor of love, this podcast. So everyone knows I usually interview women on Ladies Who
Mhm.
Lead. But when you approached me, I was drawn to the obvious. You're a man with stage 4 breast cancer. And
Mhm.
your story is truly one to share with my audience. So first of all, I just want to give people some statistics.
Sure.
I understand that less than 1% of breast cancer patients are men.
Mhm.
I have had many friends, not 1 or 2, but more than 5 friends that have had this diagnosis. They've either passed on. I had one year where 3 women
Mhm.
passed on in 1 year. They're still fighting, or thankfully, like myself, is now cancer free. It's so prevalent in women. You cannot find anyone who does not know a woman who has had this happen in their life. So let's start with you before the diagnosis. Where
Sure.
was your life? How are you doing?
Well, um, I think it's better if we go back a couple of years before my diagnosis, because a few years before my diagnosis in 2018, I had a stroke, a level 4 ischemic stroke.
Wow.
Um, and I was almost 300 pounds. I would smoke occasionally. I drank excessively. I was stressed out at work. I was doing like it was the combination and the worst of all the worlds, right? I had this stroke and it wasn't this immediate wake up call that I sort of thought that it would be, right? It took me a little while to sort of come around to that I needed to make some changes. So in the fall of 2019, um, I decided I was going to use the new year, New Year's resolution. I was going to use the new year. Like, everybody, I'm going to lose this weight and I'm going to change my, all the things, right? Except I did it. If you remember, obviously, most people do, 2020, that was COVID. Everybody was outside walking, and I was in the very beginnings of my weight loss journey. So I just walked off 120 pounds. And that's sort of where I did it. I put less food in my face and I walked a lot, and I didn't do anything that I sort of couldn't maintain. But during that process, my my years before that, I'd lose 50 pounds and then I'd gain 70, or I'd go up and down. And when I got to this point, I decided also to take a real look at myself, and that weight loss and that my happiness wasn't just a physical thing. It was mental, emotional, it was spiritual. It was all of these things combined. So basically, what I did was I went into some deep, deep therapy. I got a new therapist, and one who would hold me accountable. And she did. And for 2 years, I flipped over every rock in my soul. I looked at everything. Um, and I found the things that I needed to be accountable for. I made up a list of about 75 people that I owed an apology for. Some were back in college, some were in my military days, some were former colleagues, some were people I hadn't talked to in 25 years. But I wanted to be accountable to myself. And part of being accountable to myself was being accountable to them for these things. And so that whole process happened, right? And now I'm, 2020, 2021, 2022. I'm sort of in this full vibe and this work, and I'm deeply into yoga and Reiki and meditation. And that's how I'm keeping this weight off and all of these things, right? And then in March of 2023, I'm putting on deodorant and I feel a lump and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I went on with my day because that's what guys do. I didn't think anything about it. And March became April, and April became May, and June became July, and the lump still didn't go away. And I was like, well, that's weird. But I didn't really think that much about it. I knew I had a annual exam, a physical coming up in August. And so, I was 52 at the time. I decided to just, add weird lump to the list of other things I was going to bring into my physical, right? It wasn't, why am I going to think this is anything? So I go in and talk to my doctor, who lists off about 10 things that it could be. None of them are breast cancer. But he said, let's get you in for a mammogram just to be sure. And I was like, oh, wait, what? What are you talking? A
Yeah,
mammogram?
how did that make you feel? I mean, when he even
Well,
brought up the word.
well, we'll get into the isolation. I'll throw, you threw a couple stats out there. I'll throw this one out there. Male breast cancer is 30% more fatal than female breast cancer. And that has nothing to do with the disease itself. That has nothing to do with the physical attributes of the disease. That has to do with the social stigma. That has to do with living with a woman's disease. That has to do with the pink world and the pink ribbon. All of those things lead to men dying at a much higher rate, men not going to treatment, men not being comfortable in waiting rooms, men not, all of the things, right? All of that goes into breast cancer being a much more devastating disease for men. And I'm going to say part of it is the male toxic masculinity that goes into not being able to accept that. And I understand that. And I tell people all the time, like, if I'm one of the leading spokespeople for male breast cancer in this country, that's fine. I'll work on the toxic masculinity of our ranks, right? I'll work on that. You can paint your waiting room green or orange or yellow or whatever color, that's 2 gallons of paint is a heck of a lot cheaper than, the hours and hours of therapy I'm going to, but like, that's the level that men are sort of not welcome in the disease.
You know, and
And
I have to say, I was talking to a couple people about how excited I was for this interview and the fact that it was a man and what you are experiencing in life. And I said, to be honest, men don't have regular mammograms. So by the time you get and find that lump and realize what's happening, it's a bit late.
it's way too late. And that's one of the problems is that girls, if you go back to, health class in sixth or seventh grade, girls are taught you find a lump, you tell somebody, right? And boys are never taught that. Men are never taught that. It's never in the conversation that if you find a lump, you tell somebody. That's never a thing. And so that leads to more men dying, more men being diagnosed later. I was misdiagnosed stage 2. I should have been diagnosed stage 3 due to my tumors. And then because everything waited so long, that's what progressed to stage 4, right? And so all of that, my story, I started going for chemo, radiation, surgery, all the things that sort of go into breast cancer. I did all those things. And then you come out the other side and they're like, oh yeah, never mind, you're stage 4. And that happened, when I got that final diagnosis after almost a year of failed biopsies and all these other things. I was 10 months of just sort of going back and forth on stage 3 or stage 4, stage 3 or stage 4. Um, Finally, in October of 25, so just 8 months ago, I was finally, yes, you definitively have stage 4 breast cancer. And I'll be honest, like it wasn't the answer that I wanted, obviously, right? But having an answer is better than not having an answer, right? They're having some answers is better for the soul. It's better for me to be more settled than it is for me to just have constant questions. So, that's sort of the nuts and bolts of my story. There's a lot of things that I'm sure we're going to get into, but that's sort of the story.
Hmm. So when we talked about less than 1%, it comes out to, I think, about 2,600, 2,800 men
Yep, in the
I think
U.S.
in
In
the
the
US
U.S.
that get
Mhm.
diagnosed.
Yep.
You have a large social media platform. You are getting the word out. You know how to do this. This was your business, your job,
Mhm.
everything that you did in your life. So, and I'm sure it's fueled your ability to share this male story. What do you see as your goal to making this public?
Mm.
What are you working towards?
I ask myself that every day. What am I doing this for? No, I mean, when I first started doing this, I think, I started documenting my cancer journey like I think a lot of people do, right? Here's me at chemo, here's me sick in bed, here's me, and eventually I got to the point where I'm like, I'm tired of myself. I'm tired of like being in my own funk. So I started to shift it to sharing a few things about male breast cancer that people didn't know, right? And I was like, people responded to it. So my initial goal was to make sure that 30 people a day, that was what I started with. 30 people a day need to know that guys can get breast cancer. That's all I wanted to do. And now, between Instagram and TikTok, we have 50,000 followers, which I am very well aware. This was my business for a long time, right? $50,000, 50,000 followers does not an influencer make. I understand that. But 50,000 followers in the cancer community is a big number. And 50,000 followers in the male breast cancer community is an unfathomable number. And so I guess my goal has never really changed, right? My ultimate goal, I mean, I have lots of goals. Would I love to see research for male breast cancer? Absolutely, because in the 70 plus years of research for breast cancer, there has never in the history of breast cancer been anything done on the differences between male and female breast cancer, ever, by any research facility in any country. So there has never been any money put into, are there differences between male and female? Now, I will tell you this, there's one study going on right now. It's the first one of its kind. It's going on at Dana-Farber. I go to Dana-Farber. I live in Massachusetts, so Dana-Farber is near and dear to my heart. Dana-Farber happens to have the only male breast cancer department in the world. And my oncologist happens to be the head of that department. And so in theory, my guy's the guy, right? My guy happens to be the head of that department, and he's my oncologist. And he tells me all the time, he's like, Jake, I don't know anything about male breast cancer because nobody has ever done anything to tell me that I don't treat you differently than the other women that I treat. He goes, so you get tamoxifen and Verzenio, you get estrogen blocking, drugs, and I have no idea if those are the best way to treat you. That's what he says. And so, like, it, when you talk about sort of frustration and this, it bubbles up from lack of knowledge, it bubbles up from lack of caring, and it also bubbles up from the fact that I mentioned it earlier, there's about 20% of the breast cancer world that doesn't want us involved. I've been told to my face, men have too much voice in this world. You're not taking mine away from me. And I'm like, I'm not trying to take away your voice. I'm just trying to make mine heard a little bit. And that is like women that, and it's mostly, it's mostly older white women that have been in this fight for a very, very long time and work for the national breast cancer organizations that are like, if we start including men, we're going to start diluting the message, and we're going to start diluting the pink ribbon, and we're going to start diluting all this stuff. So we need to keep it. They don't include the trans community. They don't include the non-binary community. Hell, I mean, I hate to say it, they don't even include the Black women community. Black women die at a higher rate than men do. It's like 40%. It's crazy. And
Okay,
so,
these are, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but these statistics are really blowing my mind because when you sent me the email, all I
mhm,
thought about was any reason to amplify breast cancer. I am a survivor myself.
yep.
Any reason to amplify it, whether any of the people that you just mentioned, male, trans, whatever, is a amplification of something that's needed. I mean, there are cancers and diseases and things that affect even less than 3,800 people across the country
Oh,
that
a
are getting
hundred
research.
percent.
So
Right,
I'm
100%.
sitting here going, I had no idea that not one bit of research has gone to this. It
Right.
bothers me. It actually really
Right.
bothers me.
So I mean, it goes to the point where like Dana-Farber. I live in Massachusetts, right? The most liberal state in the country. You think would be very progressive, right?
They're my
Dana-Farber.
favorites, yes.
But I go to the eighth floor on Dana-Farber. That's the breast cancer floor, right? And I step out of the elevator, and the huge sign I see in front of me is the Susan F. Smith Center for Women's Cancers.
Yeah.
And that's just one microaggression in an entire day of microaggressions. When I went to my first nurse navigator meeting, and they handed me my big packet of all my stuff, right? Brochures and all these things, and this is breast cancer. I flipped through it, and it was all she and her and pictures of honestly older white women. There was no diversity of any kind. And I'm just like, I don't see myself in any of this. And and again, I'm a marketer, and I tried, but that kind of approach, it isolates so many men. It makes them, I mean, it makes them, I'm not part of this disease. I'm not part of this thing. I'm not part of the support groups. I've told this story before where I wanted to join a local support group, right? I I belong to hundreds of organizations online, and I can sit in a Zoom meeting and, see all the cubes and all those things. But I wanted to go sit in a room with a semicircle of chairs and commiserate it live in person because, I think that's important. And there's not too many cancer orgs near me, and there was a small one that does this kind of support work. And I called and I said, "You've got a breast cancer support group and a metastatic breast cancer support group." And you know why those are different? It's actually very funny. I mean, it's funny to me because I'm metastatic. Metastatic breast cancer patients aren't ever really allowed to go to the breast cancer support groups. Um, it's because we're everybody's worst nightmare. Like we're stage 4, and so when you're stage 0 through 3, and you're there and you're trying to get through and then somebody with stage 4 is like, I'm never going to be done with treatment. I'm always. It's so most places will have a breast cancer support group and a metastatic breast cancer support group. Simply because the breast cancer support group can't handle us. It's fine.
I mean,
Um,
I can understand that a bit because even when and
sure.
I was caught early and,
Hmm.
had the breast removed, but I was caught early. From the moment that I got the call, I was like, okay, this is just going to be a blip in my life. And
Right.
when the woman called and said, I'm really sorry. I mean, her voice, I was like, everything's cool. I know I'm going to get through this. I believe it. I'm fine. I have that mindset.
Hmm.
So I was like, I need to get off the phone now because you're breaking down. So I can
Yeah.
understand now that you explain it why it's separated because you
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
want to be brought down. You want to
we
have
are
that
we
process.
are the word, right? And optimism. I mean, as we know, as cancer, optimism in this cancer journey is
Very,
crucial.
yeah.
And so, if you're going to be scared of going to the support group and coming out worse than when you went, I get that. But I was told by this organization that I couldn't join either support group because women need safe spaces to talk about things. And I said, well, I'm a breast cancer patient and I need a place to talk about things. Like I don't like it doesn't make my mastectomy scar go away. It doesn't make my stage 4 diagnosis go away. It doesn't make any of those things go away just because you don't want to include me. But this is what men deal with literally every day, from the Susan F. Smith Women's Cancer Sign to not being included in organizations to up until very recently, really not being included with the major organizations like Susan G. Komen or the National Breast Cancer Foundation. Really just not like it wasn't until a couple of years ago that they actually put landing pages on their websites that male breast cancer actually exists. Like this is a pervasive problem. And like I talk about Komen, I attach myself to Komen. I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to organizations. I like to keep my flexibility, but I do work with Komen because Komen asked me to join their metastatic breast cancer steering committee. And as far as we know, I'm the first male patient to ever join a Komen board. There's been male doctors, there's been male donors, but there's never been male patients. And so giving that male perspective, especially the male metastatic perspective, is extremely important if you want to, when organizations have across all their websites ending breast cancer for all. I'm like, are you really? Are you really ending it for all? Because I haven't seen a he or a him on your entire website. Like,
We'll be right back. This episode is supported by Pacific Business Partners. Here's what I love about Angelica and her team. They don't just hand you a spreadsheet and walk away. Their fractional CFO service is for the founder who's outgrown DIY but isn't ready to hire a full-time finance leader. Monthly strategy calls, cash flow forecasting, pricing analysis, and someone in your corner helping you make the big decisions with real numbers behind them. If you're scaling, planning a launch, or just tired of guessing what the data is telling you, visit pacificbp.com. Now back to the show. Well, let me ask you,
Sure.
and I'm sorry to interrupt again, but let me ask you, when I'm going to assume that you've come across and have spoken to other men with breast cancer.
Mhm.
Okay.
I've
And when
only
you
actually met one in person though. Like I've been in this for 3 years and I've only actually met one in person and we went out to lunch. So that's how rare this is.
wow. So when you meet them and you talk to them, are they open about what they have, or is there even that stigma where they don't talk about it? Yeah.
No, even guys amongst other guys in breast cancer. Like I was approached about a month ago. There was a guy who wrote me and he said, "Hey, I've been watching your social for about a year. And I had stage 2 breast cancer about 12 years ago. And 5 people in my life knew that I had it. My wife, my kids, and my parents. Everybody else just knew I was sick or I had cancer because I was way too ashamed to ever say that I had breast cancer. I couldn't even say the word breast without getting embarrassed. All of these things. But he goes, in watching you for the last year, in understanding that I have nothing to be ashamed of. Like I didn't do anything to deserve this. I didn't do anything to deserve the emasculation that I'm feeling. All of these things. He finally, after 12 years, changed his Facebook profile, just in the words, to breast cancer survivor. And like the amount of support and love that he received, he goes, I should have been doing this all along. He goes, I should be doing what you're doing. He goes, I'm just not brave enough. He goes, but I applaud you for going out there and doing it. And when you ask me what my goal is, it's so that guys know that they're not alone. Like that's it. I'm not trying to raise $1 million. It is so that men do not feel as isolated and alone in a disease that they didn't ask for nor do they want. And so what I hope for is that the women out there, I mean, I'm a marketer by trade, as we talked about. 94% of my social audience are women ages 35 to 54, right in that breast cancer wheelhouse. I'm hoping that, if 94% of 50,000, those are my ambassadors. Those are the evangelicals that are out there spreading this word, right? Because they don't let people tell them that breast cancer in men doesn't exist. They just don't.
So
My
as
wife,
Okay,
sure,
go ahead.
no,
I'm going to
oh,
ask you about your family in a second too. I just want to talk to something, and I'm thinking that women that are
mhm,
listening to this, when you said you just said something about you're not listened to, you feel very frustrated about it. In a way, that's how women were quite a few years ago
of course,
before we got attention to.
women are still like that in most cases in their life. Breast cancer is one of the few places that the pink ribbon is very feminine. And I mean, look, I'm a marketer. I understand good marketing. Ford, Pepsi, the pink ribbon. I mean, these are massive, multi-decade marketing campaigns that are massively successful. I'm personally happy to be living under that pink rip, that pink umbrella, right? I tell people all the time, I'm like, have you ever heard of appendix cancer? I never had, right? The same number of people that get male breast cancer are going to get appendix cancer this year in the US, about 3,000 people, right?
Right.
I've never even heard of appendix cancer. So I'm happy to be in the most researched, the most funded, the most everything of the cancers, right? I just happen to have a rare part of it. But in essence, what I want to do, what my goal is, I guess this is my goal. This is a personal goal for me. It's not sort of a goal for me is not to be going to organizations or going to conferences or going to wherever and them constantly saying breast cancer for women, breast cancer, and me going, oh, and men, and men, and men. I mean, that gets tiresome and old really quickly. My goal is to be sitting at a panel, say, for Susan G. Komen, and on the panel is 8 metastatic breast cancer survivors. And nobody has to say he's male breast cancer. Just the fact that I'm sitting there just says I have breast cancer. That's where I want to be. I want it to be a normal. I don't want to be the outlier on the Susan G. Komen boards. I want other guys on there. I don't, this isn't for my own hubris or my own ego. I want other men to feel empowered to join these boards and to be public with their things. I've had lots of guys say, hey, I'm just going to start posting about, and he goes, I don't know how to do this. Great. Just post about it. You're not going to do it wrong. You're not going to do it wrong. Just do it. I had a young mom, and I say young because 31 is way too young. I mean, anybody getting diagnosed with metastatic disease but 31 is heartbreaking to me. And she wrote me the other day and she said, hey, I'm laying in bed right now. I was reading this text or this thing at 7:30 in the morning. And she goes, I'm laying in bed right now and I cannot get myself out of bed. My kids are late for school and I was diagnosed 2 weeks ago and I'm just crying in bed and I can't get out of bed. And I found your page and I've watched about 80 to 90 videos. And when I went, she liked all of going back. I'm like, who is liking this video from 2 years ago? Like, what is happening? And she said, you got me out of bed. Mm-hmm. And I said, A, I'm very happy that you're out of bed. But B, I didn't do anything. I'm just a tool on social media, right? And you can say I'm a tool on social media in lots of different ways, right? But I'm just a tool that you got yourself out of bed. You used motivation. I may have said some things, but you internalized those things and you felt good enough to get out of bed. You did that. I didn't do anything. You did that. Because that's, I think, the most important thing. So when you ask me what my goal is, it is those individual conversations where people are like, I don't know how to keep on going. And I'm like, listen, I get it. I get it. I get it. But you have to. Or the guy that reaches out to me saying, hey, I found a lump and I'm scared. And I'm like, it's okay. The odds are in your favor that it's not breast cancer. 99% chance that it's not breast cancer, right? And so I try to encourage guys. And at the same time, I'm like, you need to go get checked out. Like, I'm not going to say that. you need to go get checked out, but the chances are good that it's not. And so far, every single guy that I've been doing this, since I've been doing this, every single guy that's reached out to me that found a lump, it's turned out to be not breast cancer. Now, I've had other guys that have come to me that already had it, but everyone that said, "Hey, I'm really scared, I found a lump," it's turned out to be not. And
But the
that,
fact that you amplify this message means that they are actually getting it checked out. I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole point of it. It's okay that
right,
it's not that. It's the fact that they
right,
went in because men, I know, don't normally go to doctors once a year to get checked
yeah,
out. They
yeah,
just don't do it. So you're
nope,
getting them to do it. If that's one thing that you're getting them to do, maybe one out of, 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 end up with the breast cancer. You're getting them to go and you're getting them to get it checked out.
yep.
And we'll be right back. You know that feeling when someone asks, "Who are you outside of your roles?" And you go completely blank? I'm Lisa Andria, Second Life architect and host of the Ladies Who Leap podcast. I help women build their identity for the first time because many of us were never given that foundation to begin with. We spend decades being whoever everyone else wanted us to be. My work gives women permission to drop the performance and meet their authentic self. And when they do, the people pleasing stops, decisions become clear, and life finally feels like theirs. If you're curious where you fall, take my free identity void quiz. The link's in the show notes. And if you'd like to talk to me, please go to ladieswholeap.com and click on the Let's Connect button, and let's have a conversation about your identity. Now let's get back to the show.
Yep.
So, talking about, because normally what I do is I ask the women on my podcast, who do you go to for support? Because a lot of women think, oh, I can do this. I don't need any help. I don't ever need support. And it's very important, whether it's a
Yeah, I
community or
don't
a
think that at
person.
all.
Yeah, thank you. Because women do that. Who do you go to for support on those bad days?
Well, the answer is very clearly my wife. She's my best friend. She's the best human being in my life.
Mhm.
Um, but it extends out from there, right? So we live in this. If I send you some photos, you can pop them up here. We live in a multi-generational home, where my wife and I we have several children, but we still have a 16-year-old at home. But my daughter, who's 31 and was living in Texas when I first got sick, her and her husband and the three grandkids decided that they didn't want to be that far away from us during this time. So they sold their home and they moved in with us. And so they live on the second floor. We live on the main, my wife and I live on the main floor, and my 16-year-old lives in the bottom. So I have this built-in support network that is, I realize how lucky I am to have my grandkids literally walking in the door every day, or have because before that I was once or twice a year when we get down to Texas, right? It wasn't very often that we could get down there. So, and then extending out from there, we have our core group of sort of the core friends, our best friends from college and from the military. We have those. And then it extends out to like, and I really mean this, like people that I don't know or I've never met, or the social audiences. Like I, I really mean that. As much as people tell me I give them, I can't undervalue how much that community means to me, that they get me through hard days. I didn't post for a couple days, just because I was depressed, and I didn't, I was like, "Oh, I don't, I didn't have anything in the can to post." And I was like, I'm just not going to post today. And it was just 2 days. And I heard from several people saying, "Jake, are you okay?" Like we all know that we need downtime. These are not like friends. These are just, social media followers. But like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? Like we're here, but just let us know. And, that kind of like, the community matters, and it helps me as much as I help them.
So, speaking of communities,
Hmm.
you're part of a community called the Light Foundation out of Southern California.
Hmm.
Why this organization are you tying yourself with? Tell us about it.
Well, there's a notion, as you've gone through, and people that are stage 0 through 3, and go through it very differently than somebody that's stage 4.
Yeah.
But it's this notion of survivorship that, society, you know, you get diagnosed with breast cancer, you go through whatever treatment you're going to go through. If you go through the big three, you go through chemo, radiation, surgery, and then you finish and you ring the bell and everybody's all excited. And the world just expects you to go back to work or go back to your life or go back to your thing. And your world is completely turned upside down. Most of the time, you're still sick from chemo or radiation. But you rang that bell, right? That notion of survivorship being the hardest, it was for me. That survivorship being the hardest part of this entire journey. When society wanted me to be okay, but I wasn't gonna be okay, and I wasn't, and I didn't feel right. Like, so light is trying to make it so survivorship isn't so hard. They're offering peer-to-peer coaching. So very similar to this conversation, right? I'd be sitting here talking to my coach, and we meet as regularly as we do. And these are trained coaches in breast cancer, to know what's going on, and then they're trained by light. And so that's why I attach myself. I think it's really important to know that this journey doesn't end the second you ring the bell. And for metastatic patients, right? Ringing the bell is a funny situation, right? Because we're never gonna be done, right? We're never gonna finish treatment. And this last time when I finished radiation, I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, you know, I don't think I'm gonna ring the bell. And she's like, the hell you aren't. she's she's like, I understand that this may not be the last radiation you get. In fact, it's probably not going to be. But it's the end of this radiation. We're marking this time. It ended this thing, and we're going to move on to the next thing, but it ended now. And I said, okay. And so I ring the bell for probably other people. I don't necessarily ring it for me, but it's an important way to keep time during this journey, right? If I ring this bell along the way. So
Yeah, and it's a
my,
milestone. She's right. It's a
it is,
milestone. It's
it is.
and it's a testament to your resilience, because resilience is what I have a friend going through all of this, and it was
Mhm.
several years of it, and she's, gotten to the point where she's not actively on radiation and chemotherapy
Mhm.
right now. Um, and so it's a milestone for her. I mean, she's getting into the
Yep.
whole wig thing. She looks
Hmm.
fabulous. It's like an accessory that she uses.
Right.
So we talked earlier before we got on the podcast, and I admitted that 2023, when I was diagnosed and went through quite a bit of change in my life as a result of this, it was the biggest personal growth year I'd had. What type of personal growth can you attest to because of this experience? And you already had been on a personal growth
Right. And
journey, right?
that's where I was sort of stuck. Um, so we affectionately called that transformation in 2020, 21, and 22. That was Jake 2.0, right? That's what we called them. I was a changed individual, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was a really changed person. I was just trying to be the best person that I could be. And then when I got sick, as time went on, I was still trying to be that Jake 2.0, right? Um, but what I was wrestling with was that Jake 2.0 can't exist without the lens of cancer on it. Like, it just can't. I can't be that person. I have to and that doesn't need to be a negative lens. It just has to go through that lens. And so, honestly, earlier this spring, I was in the churn, right? What my wife and I call this, just this emotional, where am I? And I was trying to get back into yoga, and it wasn't working. And I was getting physically frustrated because I had lymphedema and other things that just making it just more difficult. And what I got to after sort of a, a big sort of an emotional meltdown was, I can't go back. Jake 2.0 doesn't exist anymore. It's Jake 3.0. And the only difference between Jake 2.0 and Jake 3.0 is cancer. And you have to put things through that lens. And once I once I sort of let myself off the hook for not being as good of a human being as I thought I was being for Jake 2.0, right? Once let myself off the hook for that and said, okay, this is just everything is getting run through the lens of cancer. Okay, well, now I can give myself some grace, which is something I find very difficult to do. But I did. I gave myself some grace to become something different. And then I'm still becoming that. For those of you who do go onto my channels, on the top three pinned on both Instagram and TikTok, there's an intro video where I introduce myself. And that was just shot a couple months ago, maybe 10, 12 weeks ago. And it was talking about this very subject, how Jake 2.0 didn't know anything. And you put that as humanistic and all these other things that I thought I was becoming in those years. I really didn't know anything, and I had to put this. And so it was a great stepping stool for me to get to where I'm at now. But that's the part. It's you have to allow yourself the grace to look at your life through the lens of cancer and still like yourself. Like that's a hard thing. And that's where I had to get to, right? That's what allows me to do this, right? I have this talked about my support. The support of my family allows me to be in the kind of optimistic mood to be able to do this and to be able to do social. And if I was too busy fighting for my life or fighting for everything else and if I didn't have the available time to be a content creator because I was too busy being sick and trying to, survive, they do. I mean, I'm pointing back to my wife. She's behind that wall back there, but like they do that for me. Like they provide for me all of that so that I can go and, try to change the world. Not to talk too grand, but that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make it so that guys are not as afraid.
Well, I think you saying that you have to give yourself grace is a way of saying you need to forgive yourself, meaning probably your body for
Yeah.
giving this to you. That's
Yeah.
that's a whole, doing the Ho'oponopono, right?
Yeah.
Hawaiian
Yeah.
forgiveness method is forgiving your own self, your own body, like, why did you put me through this? Why am I going through this? And actually giving that sense of forgiveness so that you can be at peace.
Yeah, one of my biggest things when I got into yoga and meditation, I certainly veered a hard right into Buddhism. And one of the things that I learned through that was certainly the tenet of do no harm, right? That's very well known, right? But do no harm also means do no harm to yourself.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's the tricky part, right?
Yeah.
That's the crux, right? Is do no harm to yourself.
Yeah.
And once you can get there, and I work on that every day, and I fail it every day, but I work on it every day to try and be the best version or the best human being that I could be, so that I can get out there and just, social media, as we know, is filled with a lot of undesirable stuff, right? It just is.
Yeah.
So if I can be a little beacon of hope and light on social media, I got to tell you, I I have my content creator world, right? The cancer world on social media. And then I'm a user, right? I'm on all these other pages and everything else, right? I'm a user, I'm a social media user. Cancer world's so nice. Like it doesn't have all the garbage and I mean, yes, there are people that get in there and say things, but for the most part, like cancer talk and cancergram, like it's great. Like it's a great supportive place to be. So if like here's a word of advice, if you're out there and you're not finding the place that you need to be, find some good cancer Facebook groups, find some good people on TikTok to follow. Those things, they matter. I got to tell you, I know when I say TikTok, people are like, yeah, I'm not 16. I understand the largest number growing in TikTok right now is Gen X by double digits. They're the generation flooding to TikTok more than anything else is Gen X. And so, when I joined TikTok 4 years ago, and I was 50. I'm one of the only 50-year-olds on there. But there's so many, people older than me. And now, you're talking about specific topics and everything else. And so the TikTok community, the cancer community on TikTok is great. It's my preferred platform. It's the place I like to be, to spend time the most is on TikTok. So
I'm on it and I got
yeah,
into it late, actually in my 60s. So
yeah,
thank you very
it's
much.
great.
I was going to ask where you are in your cancer journey, but I think we know about that. And I don't want to
Yeah,
focus on that, actually. I love everything else that we've discussed.
yeah.
So tell everyone, how can they get a hold of you? I'm going to have everything in the descriptions,
Oh,
but for
sure.
those people that are just listening, give them
Hmm.
one or two places where they can read and see your posts, even if it's on TikTok. How do you present yourself?
Yep. So on Instagram and TikTok, I'm at the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. It's a numerical 4. Um, like I said, I've been in marketing my entire life, and I always would tell my clients, they're like, what should we name the company? I'm like, name it exactly what you do. And so I took my own advice when I named my branded channels, right? It's the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. That's also my website, the guy with stage4breastcancer.com.
And I think
You
your
can
Instagram at the guy with stage 4
Right.
breast cancer.
It
Yeah.
is true. And then my email is the guy with stage 4 breastcancer at gmail.com. And I say that because if there is a guy listening to this, if there's a woman that passes it along to a guy who's lost and doesn't know what to do, or if guys just stumble across my page, I say this all the time. There are 2,500 breast cancer organizations in this country. There are three for men,
Mm.
three. And so finding a place, when you get diagnosed and you just start Googling, and you're like, where do I even start? It's endless for women, but it's very difficult. So right on my homepage is a yellow button that says if you're a guy with breast cancer and don't know where to go, like start here. Like if you don't know where anything else will go, like start here. And it's got my contact information because while at 50,000 followers, I can't necessarily answer every comment and every like and all those things that I try to do. Every single guy that reaches out to me, especially if they're a guy that's either has breast cancer or thinks they have breast cancer, I'll talk with them. And so on there, on that yellow tab on my website is not only my contact information, but it's got the three male breast cancer organizations, which all do a fantastic job um, in helping people. It's Male Breast Cancer Happens, Male Breast Cancer Global Alliance, and His Male Breast Cancer. They do. They're the support function. If they weren't doing the work that they're doing, I certainly couldn't do the work that I'm doing, right? Which is just, I'm just blabbing on the internet, right? They're doing the real hard work over there.
Right.
So I commend them for doing that.
So normally I ask my guests to give me their favorite quote, mantra, or positive affirmation. Did I tell you about that?
Mm-mm.
No. Is there any mantra that you've been living by through this whole process that you can share?
Part of doing what I do on social media is being as vulnerable and as open as I can be, really. I mean, what you see on social and what you see here is no different than if I go over there and start talking to my wife. And so we had this when I was 20, 21, 22, when I was going through that emotional churn. It was nothing happens unless we say the hardest things out loud. And
Mm.
that became this thing that my wife and I, we say the hardest things out loud to each other. Because
Mm.
much like Voldemort and Harry Potter, if you can say those hardest things, right, it takes away their scary power.
Mm.
And I can attest to that when you can say the hard things about death and dying, right, those impossible thoughts that you would never think about saying to somebody else, but you actually say them to somebody else, not just to the mirror, but you say it to somebody else. It takes a lot of the venom and the sting out of those words. And so uh, that became, and it still is, a mantra that I live with today, which is, say the hardest things out loud, even if they really hurt. So it's what we do.
Thank you. Thank you for seeking me out. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing this information. I certainly will be promoting this podcast as much as possible because
Thank
for
you.
those women that are listening, this is good for you to know for your husbands and sons and
It's
uncles,
true. It's
fathers.
true.
Yeah.
I say, and I know we're getting up, but I say this all the time. Going back to that health class, sixth grade health class, right? Women may be touching or looking at their men's chest more than men are, right? Whether it be during happy time or anything else, right? Women have that mandate if they see something on their guy to say something, right? If they see something, or women may look at their guy's chest and know what the normal looks like, and then for when something abnormal happens, they're going to know what that looks like. Or when they feel their chest, if they feel a lump, then say something, right? That's incredibly important that women are active in this because women are our caregivers. I mean, for the most part, right?
And men don't go get mammograms on a
We don't
regular
get we
basis
don't
like
we
we
don't we
do.
don't get screened, right? We don't get screened at all. Right.
So it's going to be up to someone, either themselves, which
Right.
sometimes they don't want to get, even go
Correct.
get
Correct.
checked, but for the
Hmm.
woman in their life to actually
Right.
insist on it. So
Yep.
it's very
It's true.
important. Thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, friend.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening or watching Ladies Who Leap. It's really important for me to continue this work. And I like, subscribe, follow everything. And if you have a leap story to tell, please get in hold of me. It's easy. And have a great day. Thanks again, Jake.
Have the best day possible, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to Ladies Who Leap. This episode was brought to you by Pacific Business Partners, helping women entrepreneurs build businesses with clarity, structure, and soul. If you're ready to take the next leap, learn more at pacificbp.com or follow at Pacific Business Partners on Instagram. I'll see you in the next episode of the Ladies Who Leap podcast.